We also talked a bit about, because sometimes they felt real pressure. I don't know if you feel the pressure to get that med on board and get that kid medicated and get him safe. So we saw a lot of that as well. That was perceived to be a problem. And they were saying, look, the staff are going to be scared. If I don't get him medicated, I'm under pressure. So the same set of pressures that comes there when I don't have what I need to have a well-functioning, really can talk about these basic things. Here's the last one, the PRNs, or what do you call them? EOPs? EPOs. So we again, we're moving in that direction. People said, the staff are scared. And so, yeah, it's true. They are. Training. So you can see some of the issues. So staff resistant can be some of the issues. And these are some of the things that we encountered and that we'll always encounter. It's not that these are never going away. Kids are always going to have, when they grow up, have to learn how to ride a bike. That's not going to go away. Kids haven't learned how to ride bikes. Every new staff has to kind of work through that. It doesn't go away, but do I have what is in place to do those kinds of things? Well, that's kind of the whole, I think, the idea behind aggression, algorithms and assessment. And of course, given this thing that clouds everything in our inpatient units, it's not going away. It's going to be along with us. And this is just an essential element of, I think, of a well-functioning inpatient unit. Now, the MOAS is the most commonly used one for research. It's a great clinical instrument. And basically, you get to rate 4 kinds of aggression. And so there's verbal aggression. And notice the anchors. You're going to read a little bit better in a sec. I'll come back to this. But there's verbal against property, against self, and against others. Physical aggression. So, and then they weight aggression against people highly. That's a pretty important one. We'll come back to that. The anchors, I think, work pretty well because you're going to score Todd in a minute here. People often use this. Now, every tool I'm showing you is free. That's another one. CGI, well, it's a single item, but hey, I'd rather have some thermometer than none. And if someone who really, a team might give every kid a CGI once a week or something like that and track. I mean, a lot of different ways. It'd be nice to make it fit with some of these other things, like what John was talking about, this little thing that tracks the safe days. I mean, that was like that'd be an interesting thing to begin using that as a tool. That one works. Here's a BPRS, a brief one. Again, meant to be useful. Now here's again the MOAS, and I'm going to show it to you a little closer up. So verbal aggression, and then we're going to score Todd. Okay, so we all witnessed Todd, and we had a little story. So 0 is no verbal aggression. Does he get a 0? No. Shouts angrily, curses mildly, or makes personal insults. Does he get that? Definitely. Gets it. Okay, good. Okay, so we got him at least a 1. How about a 2? Curses viciously, severely insulting, has temper outbursts. Yeah, I'd say I would give him that. Impulsively threatens violence towards others or self. What's because I'm going to get him? Anybody quibble? Anybody say, well, I thought that was kind of a 2. How many here would say 3 definitely? How many would say, no, I kind of heard a 2? Okay. Guess what? You're both right. Because it's you that uses it, and there are no national norms. The norm is you and your team should train them and begin to use it together the same way. How about number 4? Threatens violence towards others or self repeatedly or deliberately. Was he threatening anything about in one of those little vignettes?
Go get the other guy.
He said, was it repeatedly? The word repeatedly is in there.
He was hitting his head against the wall.
Yeah, okay.
I thought he got his head knocked against
No, he knocked my head against the wall. Yeah. So everybody agrees on 1 and 2. You could have a 1, 2, and a 4, by the way. Nothing wrong with that. So the way you do it is you take all those little numbers you've checked and take all the numbers you think apply. So they're meant to be in order of severity. But sometimes a kid might curse viciously, insulting, but he curses viciously, but isn't loud and shouting. So you can have any or all of them. Add them up. Take them and you put them down here. So Todd had a 1 plus a 2 plus some of you said a 3 or a 4. Let's see, he has a 6. So we'll put a 6 there, right? Okay, aggression against property. Did he get a 0? No. slams door angrily, rips clothing, urinates on floor. Well, he wasn't urinating. He was actually doing stuff. The idea behind this is only personal stuff. And he's not like trying to do things with other things that are more damaging. Slamming a door is different than breaking a door, right? Throwing objects down, does he do that? Yes. Okay, so we'd have to give him a 2. How many would give him a 1 as well? Any ones? Well, I'd give him a 2 though, right? Yeah. Okay. How about a 3? Breaks objects, smashes windows. He could have broken the chair, but he didn't, right? 4, sets fires, throws objects, nope. So he gets a 2. That total goes down here, and it's multiplied times 2. Okay, autoaggression, physical, all right. Picks self, scratches, pulls hair out, hits self. You see any of that? Then bangs head, hits fist into walls, throws self on floor? No. Inflicts minor cuts, bruises, burns, or welts on self? No. Major injury on self, or makes a suicide attempt? I said something weird. It was kind of like that. I don't remember, but it didn't quite fit any of these, did it? Okay, menacing gestures. Swings at people, grabs at clothing. You had the sense that it definitely would have been true, because I was shaking and waving. Strikes, punches, scratches, pulls hair of others. Who do we have to ask? Yeah, the kid. Of course, he'll say, yeah, he did. Yeah, or maybe there's something else we'd be observing. Okay, so we might have to do a little detective work there. If the kid's scraped up, we might have some reason to think there's injury, right? Attacks others, fracture, loss of teeth. Okay, and then notice that score, let's say it was this, gets multiplied times 4. You add it all up, and that's your total weighted score. This is Todd's Hulk score, the Incredible Hulk score. So while working with an 8-year-old, I'd say, wow, you're like the Incredible Hulk. We got to really work on this. So when you get into these little explosions, because this has got, we got a problem here. So we put into his words, I'm tracking with him, but I'm tracking with nursing staff, and everybody's kind of now has a common language to communicate that he's taken control of that little volcano within, because he's got something. It's his agenda now, not just me putting him on a med. Okay. So what I'd like to do is our final close here. I'd like you to think about the following things. I'm going to take you to, this point here. What we know from a lot of settings is if we don't measure, everything else is up for grabs. We don't have some way of communicating about the assessment. We don't know that there's a rate of bipolar. We just know people using a term. And the huge implications for a term that we don't even know what it means. And there's no assessments in any of that. We're in inpatient settings where we can do better than that. We've got a structure and a systematic way of tracking. So what I would like us to do is this. Basically, I'm going to skip several slides here. This one is basically pointing out how the PRNs, when you give a kid a PRN in the hip with a needle, works great. Doesn't matter if drugs in it. Boy, that needle, man, thank you, doctor. It works great. And so we know that from research. The placebo effect in an inpatient setting for an acute med is big. So it does raise questions about how often we use these as well versus other more appropriate issues. And so in New York, we got into how do we really pull back on these EDOs or EODs or PRNs. So what I'd like you to do is the following. Okay, so think of the things we've talked about. We've talked about polypharmacy. We've talked about assessments, tracking tools. I haven't gone over rating scales for side effects, but there's another easy target. What we know is that whether it be child psychiatrists like, say, me and John and I go assess a kid together. On average, the studies have been done, even though we're board certified, we get different diagnoses. Our kappas are 0. The studies have been done, not with me and John, ours would be really good, but the studies have been done with board-certified child psychiatrists. Kappas are 0. Unless we agree on how we'll structure and we'll ask certain questions and use rating scales. Then we get right up there. So if we don't do that, I mean, this is a communication. It goes right to the validity in communication. So we know that, and there's a lot of good data, and we talk about as communication tools like a lab value, et cetera. So we've talked a bit about some of these scales. So I want you to think about that. The next target might be using your stats, PRNs, or EODs. I don't know. We didn't talk much about dosing, and if you get under pressures there. But we have talked about polypharmacy. There's another good one. So Bob said something last night, and let me just ask, in most of your settings, I mean, you're the doc. It's not like you have 7 docs, right? So what kind of procedures do you have in place to kind of get everybody to sit back and take a look? Because, I mean, we're the prescribers, but how do you review the case on 3 or 4 or 5 meds? How do you, like, could I call you up and we share, you review my cases and I review your, how does that get done? How do you start thinking out of the box? Just wondering about that. It's hard to do when I'm alone, but we do know that when I share my cases and I have to verbalize out loud, we see this hundreds of times on our consultation calls, it forces a different kind of thought. And I become more analytic and more critical if I'm forced to verbalize something to a colleague. And I guess I should probably do, and I start correcting myself as soon as I start verbalizing. It's very interesting. So what I'd like you to do is take out that piece of paper, or take another piece of paper before we close here. Pick one more goal. If you could do something different with your prescribing, and it might be an assessment tool, might be a rating scale, might be something that you do with staff. You might tie this right back into your beginning goal because they're all intertwined. What would it be? Okay, we've got 3 minutes, and if our rapporteurs, our scribes, would write them up on that piece of paper, and then we'll close as soon as you have that up there. Okay? Get started.